Part I, the blessing of the sacred fountain. The waves lapped gently against the shore, whispering their ancient melodies as the sun rose over the horizon. Beyond the edge of the golden sands stood the fountain of Lumira, a structure carved from radiant marble, said to be a gift from the heavens themselves. It was adorned with intricate runes and a statue of the goddess Sulis, her arms open as if to embrace the world. Before the fountain knelt Kiranthula, a young wanderer whose heart was heavy with longing. His raven-black hair fell over his eyes, and his cloak, frayed from years of travel, clung to his shoulders. Kiran was no noble, no warrior of renown, just a farm boy from the distant village of Old Erwin, where plague had recently claimed his family. His dream was simple yet profound, to find a cure for the sickness that ravaged his homeland. He clasped his hands tightly, his voice trembling as he prayed. Goddess Sulis, Mother of Waters, hear my plea. Grant this fountain the power to heal all who come to it. Let its waters cleanse the blight from my people and mend what no earthly healer can. A sudden breeze stirred, carrying the scent of salt and blooming wildflowers. The waves grew still, and the sunlight seemed to focus on the fountain, illuminating it with an otherworldly glow. The air thickened with divine energy as the figure of Sulis herself appeared above the water. Her presence was radiant, her form wreathed in flowing silks of azure and gold. Her eyes, like twin stars, gazed down at Kiran with both kindness and gravity. You are bold to call upon me, mortal, she said, her voice resonant and melodic, but your heart is pure, and your cause just. The waters of Lumira shall be blessed. From this day forth, they will heal wounds, banish disease, and renew strength. Kiran's heart leapt with joy, but before he could speak, Sulis raised a hand. Yet there is more to this blessing, Kiran of Old Erwin. For your devotion and courage, I grant you a boon, the strength to endure the trials of Lumira. 3 tests await you, and each will push you beyond your limits. Succeed, and you will earn a power to safeguard not just your village, but the world. Fail, and the fountain's gift will wither, and you shall return to dust. Kiran swallowed hard, fear and determination warring within him. I accept, my goddess. Tell me what I must do. Sulis smiled faintly, her form beginning to fade into the light. Follow the path to the Cavern of Whispers. There, the first trial awaits, the test of truth. Beware, Kiran. Truth is not always what it seems. And with that, she was gone, leaving the fountain aglow with shimmering waters that cascaded endlessly into the sea. Kiran stood, his resolve firm, and began his journey. The test of truth. The path to the Cavern of Whispers wound through ancient forests where the trees stood like silent sentinels. As Kiran ventured deeper, the air grew cooler, the shadows darker. He carried only his father's dagger and a small pouch of provisions, knowing he would have to rely on his wits and courage. When he reached the cavern's entrance, he was greeted by an eerie sight. The face of the rock itself seemed to shift and twist, forming strange, fleeting images, a laughing child, a snarling wolf, a weeping woman. The whispers began as soon as he stepped inside, soft and indistinct, yet filled with urgency. The cavern opened into a vast chamber bathed in a dim, ghostly light. At its center stood a pedestal, upon which rested a silver mirror. As Kiran approached, the whispers coalesced into a single voice, a deep, resonant tone that echoed through the chamber. Kiranthula, step forward. The test of truth begins. Kiran hesitated, then squared his shoulders and stepped before the mirror. As he gazed into its surface, his reflection shimmered, and the image of his younger self appeared. The boy in the mirror spoke with a voice that was achingly familiar. You're a coward, Kiran. You left your village when they needed you most. How do you expect to save anyone now? Kieran clenched his fists, his heart pounding. That's not true. I left to find a cure, to help them. The image shifted, showing him a vision of his parents' burial, the villagers' mourning. They needed you there, the reflection said coldly. But you ran away. Admit it. Kieran's throat tightened. The reflection was wrong, or was it? Guilt had plagued him every step of his journey, and now it stood before him, undeniable. No, he whispered, then louder, no. I left because I had to. Staying wouldn't have saved them. But if I succeed, I can save the others. The mirror darkened, and a new figure appeared, a cloaked figure with glowing red eyes. It was Kieran, older and more fearsome, his hands stained with blood. This is your future, the voice intoned. In your pursuit of power, you will lose yourself. You will become the very thing you despise. Will you turn back now, or risk becoming a monster? Kieran's chest tightened. He dropped to his knees, trembling. But then Sulis' words echoed in his mind, truth is not always what it seems. He stood, his voice steady. The future is not set. I will face whatever comes, but I will not turn back. The cavern shuddered, and the mirror shattered into light. The whispers fell silent, and a silver pendant appeared on the pedestal where the mirror had been. Engraved with runes, it pulsed with warmth as Kieran picked it up. You have passed the test of truth, the voice declared. Carry this pendant, for it will guide you through the trials ahead. Kieran exited the cavern, his heart heavier but his spirit unbroken. One trial was complete, but two more awaited. With the pendant in hand and the goddess' blessing in his heart, he set his sights on the horizon, ready for whatever lay ahead. Part 2, The Trial of Shadows. The silver pendant hung around Kieran's neck, its faint glow a reassuring presence as he traveled deeper into the wilderness. The path led him to the foothills of the Black Spire Mountains, where jagged peaks pierced the sky like the teeth of some great beast. As he climbed, the air grew thin, and an unnatural chill settled over the land. The second trial awaited. At the summit of a treacherous pass, Kieran found a strange archway formed of intertwining roots and bones. Beyond it, the landscape shifted unnaturally, a mist-laden valley where no light penetrated. As he stepped through the arch, a voice whispered in his mind, chilling him to the core. Welcome to the labyrinth of shadows, Kieran Thala. The trial of shadows begins now. To succeed, you must find the torch of Ilera. Its light is the only way to dispel the darkness. But beware, your own fears will seek to claim you. The ground beneath his feet felt soft and uneven, like moss growing on ancient ruins. Kieran drew his dagger, though he doubted its usefulness against whatever lay ahead. The mist thickened, obscuring his vision, and the silence was broken only by the sound of his own footsteps. Suddenly, the mist coiled and twisted, forming shadowy shapes. The first figure emerged, a towering creature with elongated limbs and hollow, glowing eyes. Its voice was a rasping hiss. You do not belong here, mortal. Turn back before the shadows consume you. Kieran's grip tightened on his dagger. I can't turn back. I have to find the torch. The creature lunged, and Kieran rolled to the side, narrowly avoiding its clawed hand. He struck at it, but his dagger passed through the creature like smoke. The shadow laughed, its form dissipating before reassembling behind him. You cannot fight the darkness, fool. You can only let it in. As Kieran stumbled through the labyrinth, more shadows appeared. Each was more grotesque than the last, embodying his deepest fears, the faces of his lost family, accusing him, the plague that ravaged his village, spreading uncontrollably, a vision of himself, broken and defeated. The pendant around his neck grew cold, its glow dimming. Kieran fell to his knees, despair threatening to swallow him whole. "Maybe they're right," he whispered. "Maybe I don't have the strength to finish this." But then he remembered Sulis' words, "Truth is not always what it seems." The shadows were illusions, weapons forged from his own mind. He closed his eyes, focusing on the warmth of the pendant, and spoke aloud. "You are nothing but lies. You have no power over me." The shadows shrieked as the pendant flared with light, driving them back. Kieran rose to his feet, determination burning in his chest. "You will not stop me." The torch of Ilera. Guided by the pendant's glow, Kieran pressed onward. The labyrinth twisted and shifted, its walls seeming to mock him with their endless turns, but he followed his instincts. At last, he stumbled into a vast chamber where a single flame flickered in the center, hovering above a black pedestal. The flame burned with an unnatural brilliance, shifting colors like a living jewel. This was the torch of Ilera, a relic said to hold the power of eternal light. As Kieran reached for it, a rumble echoed through the chamber, and the shadows reformed into a massive figure, a dragon of pure darkness, its eyes like burning coals. The dragon's voice was a thunderous roar. "You would take what is mine, mortal. Prove yourself worthy." The beast unleashed a torrent of black fire, but Kieran dove behind a crumbling column. He clutched the pendant, its glow flaring as he called out to it. "Help me. Show me how to defeat this thing." The pendant pulsed, and a voice echoed in his mind, "Light does not fight shadow. It reveals what is hidden." Kieran emerged from cover, holding the pendant high. The dragon lunged, but instead of running, Kieran stepped forward, letting the light shine. The shadows peeled away from the dragon's form, revealing a frail, skeletal creature beneath. Its roars turned to whimpers as the light stripped it of its power. "Mercy," the creature rasped, shrinking before him. Kieran hesitated, then nodded. "Go. Your trial is over." The shadow dragon dissipated into smoke, and the torch of Ilera floated into Kieran's hands. Its warmth filled him with renewed strength, and the labyrinth began to dissolve around him. He stepped through the archway once more, back into the sunlight. A new ally. As Kieran descended the mountain, he noticed a figure waiting for him at the base of the trail. It was a young woman clad in leather armor, her fiery red hair tied back into a braid. She leaned casually on a spear, but her eyes were sharp and appraising. "So you're the one Sulis chose," she said. "Not bad, for a farm boy." Kieran raised an eyebrow. "And you are?" "Lyra," she said with a smirk. "The goddess sent me to help you with the final trial. You'll need someone who knows how to fight, and how to survive." Kieran hesitated, then extended his hand. "I'm Kieran." Lyra shook it firmly. "Come on, hero. The third trial's not going to wait for us." Together, they set off toward the horizon, the torch of Ilera lighting their path. The final trial loomed ahead, and with it, the ultimate test of Kieran's courage, wisdom, and strength. Part 3, The Trial of the Heart. The path to the final trial took Kieran and Lyra through the Vale of Evernight, a place where twilight lingered eternally. The trees were ancient, their gnarled roots weaving a labyrinth across the forest floor. Fireflies floated like wandering stars, their dim light barely penetrating the heavy gloom. Lyra's sharp gaze darted around as they moved. "This place feels wrong," she muttered, gripping her spear. "Like it's watching us." Kieran nodded, his hand resting on the hilt of his dagger. The torch of Ilera, now bound to him, floated just ahead, casting a warm, golden light. The goddess said this would be the hardest trial. I don't think we've seen the worst of it yet. They followed the torch until the trees parted, revealing a massive stone gate carved with runes that glowed faintly in the darkness. The torch stopped abruptly, hovering just before the gate. "This is it," Kieran said, his voice steady despite the tension building in his chest. Lyra frowned. "You ready for whatever's behind that door?" "No," Kieran admitted with a small smile. "But I'm going in anyway." The gate creaked open as if responding to his resolve, revealing a vast chamber lit by an eerie, flickering light. At its center stood a pedestal, upon which rested an ornate chalice, its surface engraved with the sigil of Sulis. The air buzzed with magical energy, thick and oppressive. Before Kieran could approach, a figure materialized between him and the chalice. It was a man cloaked in black armor, his face hidden behind a helm shaped like a skull. His voice was a low growl that echoed in the chamber. "Kieran Thaler, you have passed the trials of truth and shadows. But this final test will decide if you are truly worthy." Kieran drew his dagger, but the armored figure merely laughed. "This is not a trial of strength, boy. This is the trial of the heart. The temptation." The figure raised a gauntleted hand, and the chamber shifted. Suddenly, Kieran stood not in the eerie stone hall but in the familiar streets of Old Erwin, his home village. The air was warm, filled with the laughter of children and the scents of freshly baked bread. For the first time in years, the village looked untouched by sickness or despair. "Kieran," a familiar voice called. He turned to see his mother and father standing before him, alive and smiling. Tears welled in his eyes as they rushed to embrace him. "Is it really you?" he whispered, his voice breaking. "I thought I lost you." His father's hand rested on his shoulder. "You don't have to lose us, son. Stay here. The trials don't matter. You've already done enough." The villagers gathered around him, their faces filled with gratitude. His best friend, Alice, clasped his hand. "You're our hero, Kieran. Come home." Kieran's heart ached with longing. This was everything he had ever wanted, his family restored, his village safe, his struggle over. But something about the scene felt wrong. He glanced down at his hands, which were trembling. This can't be real," he murmured. The armored figure reappeared, his voice a thunderous echo. "Why can't it be? This is what you want, isn't it? A life of peace. No more pain. No more sacrifice. All you have to do is abandon the chalice and stay." The choice. Kieran closed his eyes, steadying his thoughts. He remembered Suli's words, "Truth is not always what it seems." He thought of the villagers still suffering, the future he had sworn to fight for. If he stayed here, the fountain's blessing would fade, and countless lives would be lost. He opened his eyes and stepped back from the illusion. "No," he said firmly. "This isn't real. My parents are gone, and I can't bring them back. But I can still save others." The village dissolved into mist, and the armored figure's laughter echoed around him. "Impressive, boy. But the trial of the heart is not so easily passed." The scene shifted again. This time, Lyra stood before him, wounded and bleeding, her spear shattered. "Kieran," she gasped, "it's too late. The chalice isn't worth it. Save me, please." Kieran froze. He could feel the weight of her suffering as if it were his own. "Lyra." Her eyes filled with desperation. You can't let me die, Kieran. What kind of hero lets someone fall when they could be saved? His hands shook as he stepped toward her, but the pendant around his neck pulsed, its warmth cutting through the fog in his mind. He stopped, realization dawning. You're not Lyra. She wouldn't ask me to abandon the world for her. The illusion of Lyra melted away, and the armored figure roared in fury. You are stronger than I expected, mortal. But strength alone cannot claim the chalice. Do you truly believe yourself worthy? The chalice and the revelation. Kieran approached the chalice, his steps deliberate. The pendant glowed brightly, and he placed his hand on the cup's rim. For a moment, everything went still. Then a surge of light erupted from the chalice, and Sulis herself appeared, radiant and serene. You have done well, Kieran, she said, her voice filled with warmth. You have passed the trials of truth, shadows, and heart. Through them, you have proven your courage, your resolve, and your compassion. Kieran knelt, exhausted but filled with a sense of peace. What happens now? Sulis extended her hand, and the chalice transformed into a stream of light that flowed into Kieran's chest. You are now the keeper of Lumira, entrusted with the power to protect and heal. Use it wisely, for the trials were but the beginning. Greater challenges await you, and with them, the chance to bring hope to a world in need. A new beginning. When Kieran emerged from the Vale of Evernite, Lyra was waiting for him, her arms crossed and a grin on her face. Took you long enough, she said. So. Did you pass? Kieran smiled, the light of the chalice now pulsing faintly in his chest. I think so. Ready for what's next? Lyra smirked. I thought you'd never ask. Together, they set off into the unknown, the light of the chalice guiding their way. Kieran's journey was far from over, but he was no longer the same farm boy who had knelt at the fountain of Lumira. He was Sulis' chosen, and his story was just beginning. The end.